So here's a weird one. We've finally given Padme some real stuff to do. Remember that whole competency thing I mentioned? This is actually a pretty good example of that. She's pretty much on her game in the entire episode. In fact, Anakin is the one who nearly screws up constantly. But that feels very in character for me, doesn't it? I mean, I get the impression very strongly that Anakin is the kind of person who would be sufficiently biased and emotionally driven to do things like petty little insults or, the whole thing about the brace for the trooper and then flying the transport around, little stuff like that. But he wasn't quite biased enough to actually threaten the mission. When he came in and saw her embracing him, he could have acted in that moment and didn't. So, again, that feels like very Vader to me. He cares, and he is very emotionally driven, but not quite that far. I also rather like how she is the one who is willing to go above and beyond the call of duty, in this case, in a very literal way, in order to try and figure out what the hell is going on. I also find it amusing that our good friend the Senator, Mr. X love interest, was willing to actually go along with this for the sake of her. That makes sense to me. I actually firmly believe that someone like him, who is totally cool with playing hardball politics and being part of the banking clan and, as a consequence, the Separatist Union, is also totally cool with liking and caring about someone on a personal basis, having an actual emotional connection rather than simply being physically attracted to her. Although it's worth noting that, given how little interaction the two have had in some time, how much of that is actual emotional attraction is debatable, but I digress. I felt bad for 3PO in this episode. By the way, we've actually seen them before. We saw them in the episode, the last episode of Season 1. But this is another appearance of the Betty droids. I can't remember their proper name. And all I have to say is that while the concept of a droid like that makes perfect sense, I still just kind of sigh that it exists. Funnily enough, no joke, I actually decided to look up those droids just to be like, alright, I just gotta know. And it turns out, at least in official sources, they're not actually sex droids. Whew. However, they are deliberately designed to basically be butler droids, to be house-taking-care-of droids who happen to be more visually and audibly attractive than otherwise. Go figure. I'm sure they sell like crazy amongst certain rich members of society. Me, I'd probably take a 3PO over that, but then again, I have a certain fondness for the old 3PO chassis. Anyways, I don't think I actually have anything else to add to this one. I do find the dynamic between the Separatist leaders interesting. This is not the first nor the last time we'll see that the Separatist leadership, other than being unified under Dooku, and by consequence Palpatine, isn't really what you'd call the most unified organization. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, when was the last time you've seen a council or a chairman of boards and a corporation being all nice and working together-y, right? They're all out for themselves and their own particular interests, so that makes sense to me. Anyways, that's all I got. See you next time.